Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today we're bringing you a first look at Vampire the Masquerade chapters. In this video series that we're starting to do here on the channel, we hone in onto one or two very specific elements of a game that is either brand new to you, or in this case, on its way. This was a successful Kickstarter back in the day, raised $1.3 million, 6,000 backers, and we are one of the first reviewers to actually have our hands on it, sink our teeth deeply into it. We've had it for a period of about 2 weeks before we have to mail it on. We have made it through quite a bit of the story. We have 4 full gameplay videos coming on down the road here on the channel, an unboxing video, and a full right for you, wrong for you review. But in this video, I want to talk about what we think is probably one of the most innovative parts of this system, and one of the defining features or coolest elements of Vampire the Masquerade chapters.
You should grab it out of the box, because they deserve to see all of its glory.
Okay. This is the coolest part of Vampire the Masquerade chapters.
And?
This is the coolest part of Vampire the Masquerade chapters.
Yeah, this is it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nothing more?
Well, there's...
maybe a tiny bit more?
This here is the coolest part about Vampire the Masquerade chapters.
That's a decent size. I don't think there could be any more in there. Oh, wait, what?
That here is this is such a mind-blowing element of Vampire the Masquerade chapters.
I mean, chapters. I mean, it looks like these are chapters. Oh, wow. What?
Vampire the Masquerade chapters is a campaign-based, not really dungeon crawl in a way, but a campaign-based RPG role-playing game experience where you're journeying through the social hierarchy and the political atmosphere of the vampire cults in Montreal.
Yep.
This is set after the Sabbat, which was a well-known and publicized vampire faction, resulted in, because of their desecration of human society, resulted in the Night of Ashes, which was a giant purging of vampire kind. And now the Kindred try to maintain the masquerade, to keep the veil above or over the eyes of the unwitting public. You feed carefully, you talk socially, and you do your best to solve your problems with as little fanfare as possible, except when needed, and then you cover up the evidence as efficiently as you can.
Otherwise, you fear the worst, that you'll get destroyed yourself by the humans.
Yeah, well, by the humans or by the other vampires.
Yeah, true, because all the vampires' lives are at stake if they get discovered and found out, so everyone is trying to keep up the masquerade.
And so the core feature of this game is that you're going to be going from chapter to chapter, encountering and engaging in various different narrative and dialogue elements, investigations like detective work, and also combat and just straight conflict. And there's varying pathways you can go down as the story progresses. Now, most games, when they present you with the concept of a story, give you unique asymmetric characters, and then present
give you a book like this, filled with all the interactions you're going to have and all the flavor text and story elements that you might encounter.
And honestly, if you handed me any dungeon crawl or any role-playing game, and this was what came along with it,
you'd be like, cool, that's a decent amount of text there, and I can't wait to go exploring down that path.
I wouldn't be surprised. What Vampire the Masquerade does, however, is it quadruples that. I mean, it emphasizes every chapter with a full storybook.
It dissects it down and splits it up into manageable chunks, into manageable little packets that you can encounter by themselves. And so you don't need a massive book clogging up table space. You bring up one of these.
Now, why is this so cool? This is such a cool feature in this game because it highlights a few important elements about how the game works. First off, the choose-your-own-adventure nature of the game is enhanced because of this little flip book, this little storybook that happens here. You open it up and you start going from page to page, maneuvering through this narrative and not really knowing what the potential end game is or where things start crisscrossing and tying into each other.
Yeah, I like to say that it helps prevent spoilers. I'm someone whose eyes dart down a large page of text and kind of see the bold headings. And if I see what my decisions are going to be on an entire page, I kind of plan around that. But this prevents it. It gives you a short paragraph of text. It gives you your choices, and the resolution for the choices are usually always on an entirely different flipping page. You don't see what's coming down the line. You don't know what's about to happen, and you gotta kind of sink and immerse yourself into the story to make that decision as authentically as possible.
But then on top of that, instead of just a book that gives you a key code of variable potential events or happenstances, or one or two A or B choices that result in narrative text that could be the exact same or potentially do divert off in some non-consequential way, or even in some consequential way, Vampire the Masquerade Chapters uses these books to do 3 or 4 really important things. They set up events that can happen as just ambient stuff that's going on, from the start of the narrative always being event number 1, all the way through cars driving by, people coming and going, and knock at the door, whatever might happen when the rounds are continuing to progress forward. It sets up interactions.
Yeah.
These can be people that you're talking with, dialogues that you can have, and full conversations you can engage with, including both where you can leave the door open to continue talking with them, and also moments where you've really messed up and that door closes, either with them trying to escape off the board, them alerting other people that are then drawn into the confusion in the confrontation, or dialogue and forced conversation that you now must journey through because you've encountered or been caught or experienced something that's led you there and you have no way back. It also sets up the core functionality of the game, which is investigations and actions. And these are, again, consequential decisions that happen, either by exploring and using your skill checks, or going through a series of checks to make sure you can hotwire a car and then drive it forward through a crowd that's in front of you. Not that that's something you would actually do, but there's so much detail. And as this book starts exploring each chapter, we're looking at 150 pages, just for chapter 19 here,
Yep.
of unique narrative pathways and branching stories. And you won't touch the vast majority of this in your playthrough.
It is very common to encounter chapters where you touch, out of 150 pages, you touch maybe a fourth, maybe a fifth. You touch 20, 30, 40 pages in that book, and then you've completed that scenario. You've completed that chapter, and you're moving on. And you don't know what other branching pathways you might have missed, or what key components of the game you're not even touching.
And the core way that they arc this into the larger story is that these books then end up giving you skill buffs or skill upgrades, or end up giving you things like effects that last from round to round or chapter to chapter. And so you end up with this trail of memories that let this be a little self-contained puzzle in and of itself. But the consequences, the cards that you carry with you, if you have certain status cards, which are this stack over here, other chapters will then call back and reference and ask questions, and all of that leads to consequential decisions. Along with that, the characters you're playing or the disciplines that you're using, which are some of the skill upgrades you have, those will also have lasting and impactful things that not only change the choices you have in this book, but then start to envelop and change the story as you play through it. And when you pop back here to this main book, one of the coolest things we've discovered is the text in this book. Especially when you flip over to a conclusion side, it's written in a way that allows 3 or 4 endings to exist here and have it still match up accurately. Like, for instance, we had a scene where there was a few different options you could have. You could have someone die, you could have someone die horrifically, you could have someone escape, you could fail your mission, and the text on the back was echoing things like, you're continuing to think and ruminate on what's just happened. The information that you've gathered is shocking and upsetting. The events that unfolded were, not exactly how you had it planned. And I was sitting there and I was like, this is true, this is all true. And I was like, wait a minute. That's designed so that multiple endings here don't ruin the story or the immersion of the story.
It is ambient enough that it can include all the possible outcomes in this book. This book ends up being your guide through your chapter. You start off with an event, and then it takes you down your winding pathway, all determined by your choices, by the interactions you have. And that is what makes Vampire the Masquerade Chapters so special. Your interactions determine your fate in the game, and you are navigating this world of hierarchy and social graces that you have to tread lightly in.
This game is probably 1/3 combat. The vast majority of it is going to be dealing with the way that this navigates the world around you in a way that I think when it comes to dialogue in a written, like on-the-table style game, I've never seen a game that executes it in the way that this one does. So when a chapter starts, typically what you'll do is you'll end up flipping over to event number 1. And in here we have, so this is, I'm not going to spoil this chapter for the record, but for instance, here's our event page, and we have event number 1 all the way through potential event number 18, 19, 20, so 22 potential events, 24 potential events could be happening throughout whatever this chapter is. Then you'll start exploring the landscape. There'll usually be some degree of dialogue or engagement that you can have with the scene, and there'll also be investigations. You can always check the little table here in the front to see what's happening. So, for instance, there'll be 2 action tokens on the board in this chapter, both of which will trigger certain specific events, right? That could be, again, turning on a radio, starting a car, punching someone in the throat, double checking to see if the stove is still on and boiling mucus. Then you have dialogue and investigation. Here in this, right now, we have dialogue potential with Antonio and De Facto. So
but that's not always going to be who you get to have dialogues with. The events also bring opportunities for new people to sprout up inside the story elements that weren't placed on the board in the beginning. We've had chapters set up with only one interaction
and 3 or 4 people that might show up.
And then 3 or 4 people who might show up.
Yeah.
And yes, you can get a little bit of a spoiler from the table of contents. You might see who might show up.
So cool.
But you don't always interact with them. They're not guaranteed to be there.
And so like here with this first guy that we talked to, Antonio, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 34, 35 potential pathways of dialogue you could go with him.
And they don't go D1 to D2 to D3. They go D1 to D8, D4 to D12.
Yeah.
You're not jumping from page to page. So like I said before, the spoilers are very limited.
Yeah.
You don't see what's coming because it jumps you to different pages. And sometimes pages have ways of combining and reaching each other through branching pathways. It's not always 1, 2, 3, 4. It's sometimes 1, then 4, then 5, and then sometimes 1, 3, 2. It's all over.
And there's another 21 points of dialogue we can have with the supervisor here, and then we still pull over to the investigations. Now, the investigations are going to be tokens on the board, and these are going to be things that you can then look at to discover, detective work in a way. So, for instance, a barred pipe here. So the way dialogue and conversation is going to work is there oftentimes going to be a series of verbal and choose-your-own-adventure style choices that you make.
And checks.
That you need to instinctually understand. And they'll also include things like persuasion checks or
searching checks,
potentially
awareness
threatening
checks,
checks.
Subterfuge.
These are going to be things that allow you to either bully and pressure another player or another NPC in the game, but also you have to be aware of the context within which you're talking. We've had situations where a little bit of flavor text leading up to that event gave us the context we needed to actually engage with it appropriately and pass it successfully.
Yeah, sometimes it'll give you hints like this player actually likes to be intimidated and therefore that is the right pathway to go on. Or this player is already very angry and you should not intimidate them and pacify them.
It's really fascinating, and one of the things that the game tells you it's going to do and absolutely does is there's moments where the thing that seems like it would be the easiest to accomplish or the simplest to do, like threatening someone, is actually not the right decision to take.
It might end your story early.
The social graces. Yeah. So again, we come over to investigation checks here. Now, investigations are going to be variable checks. You use some of your skills, whether that's an awareness, perception, or strength. You'll be rolling some dice, and those will have a series of potential consequences, like barred pipe here. 0 to 4 will read one thing. 5 would be a success reading another chapter, and 6+ would be a massive success, at least we think, reading another chapter.
Yeah.
There's a chance that 6+ might not be the best success. You could also, if you have other conditions, get a benefit or a subcategory.
Yep.
So, for instance, the barred pipe here is going to continue spinning off all the way up to, looks like 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So the checks are going to continue even after you've done that initial. This barred pipe has 26 potential contextual pieces of lineage that go behind it.
Yeah.
We have an open pipe here, which again, another series of checks, and depending on the other things that you've done around the room, you'll get better or worse at them. We have a sizable pipe here. We just got a lot of pipe work going on right now. But again, another series of checks, and if you have a certain token, you're forced to go read a certain event. So you could start interacting with something around the board, and if you've already accomplished other tasks, like for instance, we had one where we were trying to infiltrate luggage.
Yeah.
And as we started checking the luggage,
the tokens
we were succeeding, and then the characters in the game that we were also talking to started coming and picking up their luggage and walking off the side of the board.
And then sometimes the tokens will reference other characters on the board. Like, if this character is within line of sight, you don't have your choices. You don't have your options. You have to take this path. You have to read this. Or sometimes there's guard characters and watcher characters who are guarding the board. And if you come in line of sight with them, your chapter automatically ends. So you're dancing and navigating around the board with this knowledge almost.
Yeah. So that's what's so cool about Vampire the Masquerade chapters. This is the shining gem of this game and the most remarkable thing that they've put together. It is immersive, it is thematic, it is a brilliant way to play through a giant storybook style game on the table.
And it's also practical. Like I said, it is really easy to hold this book. It is really easy to flip through the pages, to find the table of contents. It is organized well. It is concise, and it is fun to go into. And it just adds so much more narrative text. Most campaign storybooks come with a book this big with all of the text included.
Yeah.
This adds... Yes, they're half page. Yes, they're like quarter pages or something like that. But it adds 100. Like most of these books have between 100 and 200 pages additional text inside them.
Yeah, it's pretty massive. All right, that's a quick little first look. That's what we've been excited about with Vampire the Masquerade chapters. Like I said, we have a ton of content coming down the road, including a full Right For You, Wrong For You, where we break down the highs and lows and give our thorough, direct opinion of this game so far. But for now, we're just excited. We're excited to dive in. We're excited to share with you more information. And yeah, I can't wait to get this copy back into my hands.
Can't wait to get our permanent copy, hopefully deluxeified.
Through. Either way, whatever the case,
whatever you do,
remember to do the important thing.
Get out and play some games.
Always put your games in tiny little books.
We'll see you
It's the best
time.
of both worlds.
Thank
books in games, and tiny things. I think that's the moral of the story.